Hi class, we're going to go through how to do a rotation on GeoGebra. So first of all, let's create a quick shape. I will create something that's nice and easy to recognize that it's been rotated. So I'm going to create like an arrow. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll be good enough. There we go. So I've created this arrow. And we want to now rotate the arrow. So what does rotation do? Exactly as the word describes, it allows us to change its orientation, its direction, without changing anything else about the shape. So we still keep the same size and shape. It's just changing the way it's going to look. So for the tool, we need to find under the transform tool, we will find rotate around a point. This is the rotation tool that we want to do, right? So if we click on this, what does it say? Select an object to rotate and the center point, then enter angle. So this one has quite a few steps in here. The whole point of the rotation is that we find a point to rotate around, and then it rotates around that point. So let's create a point. I'm going to go to point. Let's say I want to rotate around this point here as a center. So I make a point here. This is my center, and everything's kind of going to go around that. Imagine there's like a string attached to H, with all of these points having a string attached to it, and I'm going to pull it around and rotate it that way. So if I go down to my rotation tool, so I go back down to transformations, rotate around a point, I click on the center of the shape, so we select the whole shape, I click on the point H, and there it tells you how you want to rotate this. You have to describe the angle that you want to rotate by, and whether you want to go clockwise or counterclockwise, right? So for example, as we know, there's 360 degrees in a full circle. So if I were to type 360 in here, you won't see a transformation. You won't see anything change because you've just gone full circle and you've gone back to the starting point. But if I type in halfway through, so 180, then it does a half circle. Essentially going to almost mirror it, but not quite. It's just going to rotate it halfway. So let's try that, and counterclockwise is not going to matter too much if it's rotating halfway, but you'll see the other point soon. So I click on OK. It's now taken H and it rotated this triangle we said as this arrow we said clockwise. So it rotated clockwise 180 degrees until it reached this point here. And now it's created a second shape based on that. And again, if I were to say move H, if I were to move H, it would change the rotation and everything with it. Okay, so let's presume then we didn't want to do that, and then we want to do something else. So let's again go to that transformation tool, rotate around a point, click on the arrow, click on H, and say, actually, I want 45. I want a 90-degree rotation. So 90 degrees is like a right angle. So instead of it pointing to the right, my arrow should be pointing either up or down. If I go clockwise, it's going to go clockwise 90 degrees, meaning it's going to end up pointing down. And if I go counterclockwise, it's going to go counterclockwise 90 degrees and ends up pointing up. So let's go counterclockwise 90 degrees, click OK, and you can now see it's rotated it. Oops, it rotated it up that way. And if I do the same thing, rotate around a point, click on this, click on the point, the same 90-degree rotation, but this time maybe we want to do a clockwise. It'll now go clockwise 90 degrees, which is a quarter of a circle, and start pointing down. And of course, let me just get rid of these. We can also rotate it any other kind of degree, like 45 degrees, which is a eighth of a circle. And if I do this, it'll create this shape here. So you can see a bit why we might want to use rotation, because maybe we want to continuously rotate something like this so we can get a real nice circular pattern going on with whatever one shape we decide to do. And instead of having to like carefully draw out the shape so exactly the same size and exactly the same shape and nothing's changed around, I can use the rotate tool to make a nice looking pattern just by rotating something a certain number of times. So this is why rotate is important. So how do we describe a rotation? Well, let's notice everything we had to do to rotate. To rotate a shape, let me just get rid of these. To rotate a shape, I had to click on the shape I want to rotate. I had to click on the point I wanted to rotate around. And then I had to describe the angle of rotation and the direction. those 4 things have to be in description when you describe how to rotate this object. So let's do a rotation. Let's do exactly what it is. So 45 degrees counterclockwise. Okay, so I went from here to here. So let's describe this rotation. Again, I'm going to just do it on GeoGebra, but you should do it in your report. But you would go here and say, I rotated the arrow shape that we have around the center point H, which is, oh, I should have looked at it. Oh, here we go. The center point H was what we're rotating around, and H is, here we go. Oh, it's not exact. So H happened to be at the point 4.98 and 6.52. If for achieved, if you just say around center point H, so I know where you're rotating around, that would be enough. But for higher grades, let's clearly define where H is, which is the exact point here, right? So exact coordinate of H. So I rotated the arrow shape around this point H, counterclockwise, 45 degrees. So those are the 4 elements: the shape that I'm moving, rotating, the point I'm rotating around, the center point. So where is the center? I'll look at the center in just a moment, how that can change everything. The direction of my rotation, and how many degrees we did this by. It's important that you describe all of that. So lastly, let's look at that center point thing again. So depending on where the center point is, that can change everything. If my center point, for example, sorry, sometimes it just needs to get used to the tools. If my center point H is here, you can see now that the arrow is rotating around H. If my center point were in the top of the arrow, you can now see that it's rotating around the top of the arrow. So wherever you put your center point, that's where it's going to rotate the whole shape around. Imagine in a real concept that you had a piece of paper and you keep it down with your finger, and then you kind of rotate the piece of paper around your finger, right? Wherever you put your finger down, that's the center of rotation, and the paper is going to rotate around that center. And wherever you put your finger, that's going to matter as to how the final placement of the paper is going to be. So it's important that you describe where your center of rotation is, and then you carefully think about how you want to rotate it, right? So if you wanted that nice pattern that we had before, where it created a circle of arrows, well, we pinpoint the center of that like circular pattern, and that's how we're going to get that nice rotation, right? So carefully think about what outcome you want and where you'd have to place your center to do this. And I think that about summarizes rotation. Make sure you know how to use a tool, and make sure you know how to describe it clearly. Okay?